Welcome to your final installment of Making a Visual Journal with Miss Is. So like we've done with each one, we're going to review what we've done. We organized our visual journal. We've sewn our text block together. We cut our cover paper and our spine. And then we gathered our cover paper. I think we actually did that in two separate steps, but that's okay. We then assembled our book cover. So where we last left off with our book cover, you had some scrap paper and you pressed it. So I just got mine out of the press, which was some weights and some scrap pieces of paper. So I'm going to peel those off where the glue is stuck. That is not a huge deal, right? We're going to cover this up. Recycle that paper in my bin. And I have a really nice and flat and beautiful cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently bend it where the empty spots were. Make some folds there. I don't need them to be super folds like we've done in the past. I just want it to kind of fold like a book. So I'm just really gently pressing that fold. And you can tell it already starts to look like what you remember from grade school with your textbooks. Basic codexes, okay? So now you're just going to remember which is your front, which is your back. Mine doesn't really matter. I just kind of like that spot there. I think that's really pretty. So I've got that. I'm going to set that aside, okay? Because we're going to need that. So then what we did is we left off with our end papers and our text block. So we took our end papers and we glued them to our text block. So I just got this out of the press too. So this is where you're going to have some more scrap paper. I told you to probably just use junk mail, right? We glued our spine. So I'm going to make a little area for my junk. Now if yours is stuck together, you can use a credit card or your driver's license, like what we talked about, to kind of loosen it, or even a ruler. Just sometimes rulers get dirty with our inking. Okay, so I'm going to open that up, and then I'm going to open up this side. So this is where I want to be really gentle. I don't want to rip my end paper. I don't mind ripping my scrap paper, right? But I do mind if my end paper gets torn. So you'll see that it leaves a little bit of debris. That's why if you have waxy paper, it's nicer to use that. If yours leaves debris like mine did, you can always trim it off if you want to. That is not a huge deal. Make it look nice and neat. I am right-handed and I'm holding these scissors weird, so give me 1 second to correct that. Okay, it's not bad. Okay, so that's the first page of my book. My end paper, that scrap there. My spine is pretty well glued. We put some glue there, didn't we? Just to make sure that it's pretty tight. We talked about how it's like caulking if you do any plumbing work. So this is my back of my codex. I'm going to flip it over just because that's easier to peel stuff off. So I'm going to gently peel this paper. Now, it is okay for your spine to be a little ratty. I would avoid cutting here because what do you not want to cut? Like if you were to cut here, you don't want to cut your string, right? Because that would pop all your sewing that you did. And that would be quite unfortunate, right? So you don't want to do that. So I'm going to open up my end paper. Beautiful. And this one didn't glue as badly to the scrap paper. That looks good. Okay. I'm going to recycle my scraps. Okay. Make sure you always clean up your mess because usually your workspace is a shared living space with your family. You don't want to leave a mess. Okay. So I've got my basic sewn text block with my end papers attached. That looks great. Flattening it out really helps it kind of take the shape you want your book to be, nice and neat. For this next step, you can use scrap paper if you want, but what we need to do is go ahead and make our little supply list like we have for every time we've done a video, right? Because this video is all about finalizing your book. Woohoo! So what supplies are you going to want to have at your disposal? What supplies do you need today? Well, the first thing you need is what we just took care of. You're going to want your cover and you're going to want your text block. And we know that the text block has the end paper attached to it, right? So your text block with end paper. So for some reason, if you're skipping around on videos and your text block is not attached to your end paper, then you need to go back and redo that, okay? You're going to want white glue, basic school glue. And in previous videos, we've talked a lot about how you want a piece of trash that you can put a puddle on and a little piece of cardboard scraper. You can tell I've reused this. It's perfect. So you're going to want white glue. You're going to want your puddle, so your piece of trash for your glue puddle. And you'll want your scrap, cardboard, scraper. Okay, so we got text block. I've got my cover. I don't really need a ruler. I did go to my kitchen and I got wax paper. You can use your junk mail paper, scrap paper, or you can use wax paper. For this part, I don't want it to do what this one did where it was kind of stuck all the way around. I really want it to be nice and clean. So wax paper is easier to release from the glue. So I would recommend using wax paper. Okay, so we are finalizing our book. We are ready to rock and roll. Those are the supplies you need. Feel free to pause if you need to. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is open up our book. And you want to make sure, if you have your pages already pre-decorated, that nothing is upside down, right? So this should be your front cover. Obviously, that should be your back cover. And then if you have anything, like if your end paper has words on it, or if you have any of your pages with words or drawings on them, you're going to want them to be right side up. Because what we're going to start out is we're going to start adhering our back end paper to the back cover. Okay, so today's tips are to not use too much glue. You want it to be that snail trail that we've talked about, right? Snail trail. And you're not going to put any glue where it says empty or spine. Okay, it's going to fit right on the cardboard and you can just place it there to see. You've got a good boundary here, a good border along. You can put your spine right up on there if you want to, or you can center it. And then the front cover is going to attach to the end paper like that. So you have a nice, easy book. For my students, we're going to take 2 photos just so I can see your progress with this. But what I would recommend is if you have wax paper, scrap paper, let's go ahead and set that up. I'm going to cut off a little bit. I just need enough so it won't stick too much. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take my wax or scrap paper and I'm going to set it inside my end paper. Now, obviously, I have way too much, right? I do not need that much. So I'm going to cut off some of it and save it for something else because I do not need this much. I'm cutting a good border so that I've got it between my end paper without it being too much excess. So it's just resting there. Got a little border on each side. Okay. Take that over there. I wonder if this side, maybe that might give me enough of a border, but that makes me nervous. So I'm going to save this for something else. Okay. I'm going to rotate that paper. That works pretty well. So let me do it this way. I'm going to stick it in there. Oops, getting crooked on me. Alright, got both of my end papers in. Now, you're going to notice it's going to shift on you. That is not a huge deal. So wax paper goes in between each of my end papers. I've got one at the front and one at the back. Now for a basic codex, you do not need this next thing. But if you want to be a little extra, like me, you could add ribbon to it that allows you to kind of close it. My daughter is super excited that I'm making this for her And so I told her I would add ribbon. So there's 2 different ways you can do it. And I don't have permission to show you much of this book, so I'm just going to kind of point to it to show you. You could do 2 little ends if you don't have a lot of ribbon. You could go all the way across. I'm going to pause this video for a second and go get some ribbon that I found and walk you through how to do it. Okay, I am back and I am taking this ribbon that I found as we were cleaning out some of my craft stash. And I think it would go pretty well with the sparkles in her book, as well as the colors. Oh yeah, that's pretty. I'm going to do a longer strip because I'd rather trim it later and have too much than have too little. But remember, if you don't have a lot, like if you just have an old hair ribbon from, I don't know, from something, then you could do it just at the ends and tie it at the ends. So I want it to kind of wrap around and be really pretty. So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to end up tying knots in these so they don't fray, because when you have a 7-year-old who's using a journal, sometimes things get a little frayed, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to line these up. So I've folded my ribbon. Remember, you do not have to do ribbon. I just want to show you in case you want that option. I folded it so that I could find the middle. So if I line up the ends, I'm at the middle. Okay? So I'm going to set my text block aside for right now. I'm going to make a mark at my middle because nobody's going to see it. Okay, so it's right there. Made a little mark with a Sharpie. Not a big deal. But what I want to do to start out is I want to glue it down. Okay, so that it's nice and pretty. So I'm going to glue it kind of like that. Okay. I want it to kind of be even on both sides. So, as I've told you before, my dad's an engineer. I like to do things so that they're accurate. So I'm going to measure it and just kind of make some marks. This covers roughly 9 inches, so half of 9 is about 4.5. I'm going to make a little mark right there. That lets me know to make sure everything's kind of lined up. Now, I know that I'm going to see part of this from where we laid our cover down, right? So I don't want to have too much shown, but just enough at 4.5. I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. I don't want too much of it shown, but enough that my ribbon isn't crooked. So 4.5. Okay. So I'm going to set my ribbon safely out of glue way for a second. And I'm going to make myself my glue puddle because we're going to be attaching our end papers. If you aren't doing a ribbon, just ignore all the things I do with the ribbon and just roll with what we're going to do with the end papers. Remember that it's always better to pour more glue if you need it than to throw away a lot of glue, right? So pour yourself a little puddle. We don't want to be wasteful, especially in this time. Okay. Now, if you remember, you're going to have a bit of a border, but you do want to have a good amount of glue on stuff. Okay. I like to put glue on my cover just because I find that a little bit easier, especially when I'm doing this with children. So I'm going to take the glue and I'm going to spread it till about 1/4 inch of the way up. I want to make sure that it's good and strong, but remember what I told you about it being a snail trail? You don't want it to look like you spilled milk on this. So you don't want it to be too goopy, but you do want it to be secure. So I'm actually going to put a little bit more glue than I did in the past because I do want it to kind of sink in that crack where my corners are. Now, lots of different ways that bookmakers do corners. I find that the folding over is easiest for beginners. But if you wanted to do the mitered corner where you kind of trim it, that's up to you. But you should have done that a while ago. So you can always make another book. I'm sure there's YouTube videos on how to do the mitered corner. But as you notice, I'm trying to get glue on there kind of quickly. I'm using more than last time so it's not drying as fast. But I also want a good amount over here near the spine because that's where the text block tends to lift up from my book. So I want it to look nice and I don't want it to fall apart, especially when it's used as a sketchbook by my 7-year-old, right? And hopefully you who are in my class, you guys know we're making visual journals out of this, so you're going to be using it a lot. So you do want to make it strong. But those of you that aren't in my class, if you're just making it for fun, giving it as a gift, you want to give a gift that lasts, right? You don't want it to fall apart on the person you're making it for. So I think I've got a good spread. So the first thing I'm going to do, which I almost forgot about because I don't usually do ribbon in my books, but my daughter wants some, so what can it hurt? Okay, is I'm going to line up that ribbon. The thing I like about this clear ribbon is I can see where it sticks to the glue. So I'm going to grab a little bit more glue. I'm running kind of out, so put some here. And I'm going to press it down. Good. Okay. I want to give some extra space right in there. And I'm going to scrape it across just so that I know that that ribbon is sticking. And I'm going to pour myself a little bit more glue to put it on there because I do want the paper to stick over that ribbon too. And it might create a little bump in my end paper once everything's said and done, but that's not a big deal, right? Not a big deal. But you probably don't want to use like rickrack or grosgrain ribbon or something that's going to leave a big bump unless you're okay with that. And if you're okay with that, then you do that, but some ribbon can be a little textured and a little difficult to work through. So I'm putting some extra glue there just to make sure everything works. Make sure nothing's dried on you because I'm taking my time, right? So I'm going to put a little bit extra up here because I've been talking, right? Okay, so make sure you're looking at your back end paper. You're going to be gluing this back end paper to your cover, so I'm making sure my wax paper is all the way up to the fold because I don't want it to stick to my book. I just want it to stick to the end paper. So I'm going to kind of center it on this cover board. I don't want too much of my cover showing at the edges, so I'm just making sure it's centered vertically as well as horizontally. And that's the beautiful thing about white glue is you can kind of move it a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my wax paper for a second. I'm going to use the handles of my scissors to do what we've done in the other videos and on other days. Kind of get those air bubbles out, right? Like you're putting screens on devices. Protective screens on devices. It's hard to get all the way to that corner, and that's the part where you really want it to adhere. So do your best, unless you have a really good card of some sort to use. That's the hardest part. Okay, so I'm adhering it down. The weight's going to help with that a lot too. So I put my end paper back. My wax paper is in my end paper. I'm making sure everything's nice and organized. And I'm pressing it. Okay? So here's the weird part, because to do this next part, we just kind of fold this over. Okay? So that's the part that's a little annoying and a lot of kids get really frustrated on. And it's hard to do that air bubble thing. So this is the part where you're just going to have to exude patience and calmness. Okay, so find a place of mental health where you can do something, and you know you can. And if you mess up, you got to roll with it, right? You got to be okay with having some mistakes in life, because guess what? That happens, right? We've talked about that. So the first thing I'm going to do is get this ribbon taken care of, because that's kind of a pain with this part. So I'm just going to go ahead and get some glue down there for my ribbon. And I'm going to take my ribbon, line it up over here. Now I've got to pull tight. I don't want it tight. When push comes to shove, I'm going to loosen it. But for right now, I just need to be able to hold it down. So I'm putting a good amount of glue on there. And I'm going to smooth it on. There we go. And just let that kind of set for a minute. But I want to get this ribbon out of the way of my puddle. So just overlap like that. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to spread the front cover the same as I did the last one with some white glue. You know what? I just had a brainiac idea. I'm going to use this other side of the scraper to try to get those air bubbles out. Why I didn't think about that before, I have no idea, besides the fact that I'm sleep deprived and being a mom and a teacher at the same time. Okay, there we go. On it. I got this. Okay. Scraping my glue. Remember to get it in the cracks at your corners really well. So that part likes to come undone. Need some more. Okay. Remember that too much white glue makes it ripple. So try really hard not to do too much. But you do want a fair amount, right? You do want a good amount of glue on there. You want to go about a quarter of an inch up to the edges so that it really gets the edges of your end paper. Okay. I'm going to come over here. There we go. I want it really well adhered to the edge of the spine too, so I'm getting a good amount of glue there. I'm probably using too much, so I'll go back after I get this taken care of. Spreading it. Hopefully you're happy with your end product. I'm going to do a little clip at the end of this video after I let mine set to kind of show you how to open it without it falling apart on you or getting stuck to things. Okay, so before I do that, I forgot to take a photo for my students. So I'm going to want 2 photos for my students. The first one is of the book open, so I can tell that your back end paper is attached. Okay, we're getting ready to take the next one, so make sure that your waxy paper is well into the fold of your front end paper. And you are going to, I'd go ahead and move your puddle out of the way so you don't make any mistakes. You're going to take this and you're going to fold it over and try to look at where your spine is lined up from the side. Make sure your book closes so that it's not crooked. And you'll see where I'm really rubbing is along the spine where it attaches. My ribbon is going to be annoying right now. Remember we talked about how ribbon's annoying. Okay. Now you also notice that your spine sticks up more than your book. Okay. That's normal. Unless you have really thick pages, that's normal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that ribbon out of the way again. I'll open my book up. And I'm noticing that the spine is coming off. Do you guys see that? So what I want to do is very carefully, I want to really pull out those air bubbles, right? I'm using that piece of cardboard because that's easier than my scissors handle. I'm going to get that wax paper in there because some of the glue got shoved out. Okay. And I'm going to press it really well, that corner. If you used enough glue, the weight will help a lot with this. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to adjust this angle without hopefully being too jerky with my motions. Okay. You'll see the edge of the table. I'm going to take the spine, so my ribbons are coming out of the open end. I'm going to take the spine and kind of hang it off the edge a little bit because it is a little bit wider. And I'm going to get a weight and a piece of board, right? So I got to find where I put those. Where's my board? There it is. Okay, I got my random board. I'm going to set it here. And I've got a pretty heavy weight. I've got about 20 pounds. I'm going to set that so it really gets that weight on there. You use whatever you have, right? If you have old textbooks or something like that, you can use those. This is a little bit of overkill, but I'm going to put some more weight on it just in case. There we go. Just to evenly distribute and really smash it down. You're going to want to leave the weights on there. You don't need this much weight. I've got like 50 pounds. What is this? 15 each? Yeah. 30 plus 20 is 50. That's a lot more weight than I actually need, but I just want it to look nice for my kids. So you're going to leave this for 24 hours, let it dry, and then I'm going to do a little video to splice it and show you what it's going to look like when you take the weights off. Okay? Okay, so I know I wrote on here waited whole day because that's what I want you to do, but this is one of those times where I was too excited to wait a whole day. So it says wait a whole day. But what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what it's going to look like. You take everything off so that you have it nice and steady. Get my weights off. Ooh, well that was a bump. Okay, so got my board. Got my book. Okay, it's still a little moist, but it's okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is kind of get the ribbon out of the way. Okay, I'm going to open it up. And I want to bend it at the spine. So if you notice, I was kind of holding that in paper with my right hand, opening up with my left and getting a good bend there. Okay. The reason I don't do these books as sketchbooks a lot is because they're kind of hard to lay flat, but they're nice to kind of flip through and right in. You'll see that the wax paper should peel right off without destroying your book too much. Okay. Glue's pretty dry. I can feel the ribbon in there, but that's also not a big deal. Got a little bit of glue stuck there, but my pages look nice. Check it out, y'all. Looks good. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do the same thing for the back side, but just the reverse. So I'm going to open it up carefully. And I'm going to hold the end paper with my left hand right at the spine fold. Bend that back. I don't want it to tear, so I'm just being kind of gentle, giving it a little wiggle. Holding it. Ah, that is nice. Check it out. Okay. So now with the string, you could cut it short so that you could just tie a bow here. But I like to kind of wrap it around because I'm nerdy like that. And it looks extra pretty that way. My daughter's going to love this. So I'm kind of wrapping. Now, she won't need all that string, so I feel like I've been kind of wasteful. I wonder if I do it again. Why not? I got the string to do it. Okay. So now I'm going to tie it like a little present. You didn't have to do the ribbon, but you've got yourself a nice little book. You'll notice that the strings are uneven, right? So if that bothers you, I like to trim it when the bow is not tied. Find that a little bit easier. If you have ribbon that frays, like mine's going to fray over time, so the best bet is to take it, give yourself a little knot at the end, just a basic knot. That way it won't come undone on you and fray too much. So I just make, if I did that too quick, just make a little loop like an awareness ribbon, and then you stick the tail back through and you keep the knot with your hand kind of sliding it towards the end so it stays nice and tight down there, and you pull it tight. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to tie it up again. And now you have an excellent little codex for journaling or sketching. So I hope you enjoyed and that you have made something that you're proud of. But most importantly, I hope you've made something that doesn't remain blank. Blank sketchbooks are boring, y'all. Fill them up. Make them gorgeous. So I hope you enjoy. Thanks, guys, for watching all these videos. And maybe I might make more if you like them, so let me know.